Hello, I'm Robert, fact-checking, helping you with things that scare you. And this is about the idea, a story that's running a claim that the Democrats are going to, and including Pelosi, they claim, is going to ask Biden to give them the launch codes for the nukes. And it could hardly be further from the truth. So I've just uploaded a longer video explaining this, and I'm just going to a short one now. And so the basics of it is, I've got a summary at the end, that first of all, Nancy Pelosi is not even a signatory of the letter. You can read the letter up here. She's none of these people. So that's just false. It's only signed by 30 Democrats, which is not very much in the House. It's about a first strike. It's about attacking a country that hasn't attacked you with nukes. And it's not a proposal to let Nancy Pelosi authorize a nuclear attack. That would make no sense. She's not in the executive branch. She's in the legislative branch. It's just not her job. It's a proposal to let Nancy Pelosi or Kamala Harris stop a nuclear attack. And that's the only thing they'd be permitted to do with this proposal, is to stop it, stop the United States from attacking someone. And so that idea that the United States, and that's in peacetime, not to attack someone in peacetime, when you're not being attacked by a nuke yourself. But so the thing is, it's a very strange way to do it in the US government system. That's the only real problem with it. And I've got this graphic with President Harry Truman, and where the buck stops here. So in the United States, the idea is that the president is both the decision maker and is also responsible for his decisions. And so it's then very strange to add this idea that there are other decision makers that make executive decisions that override what the president does. It does make sense to have laws. He's bound by the Constitution, he's bound by the legal system, he's bound by laws passed in Congress, and he is bound by the justices and the Supreme Court. So there are lots of restrictions on the powers of a president, but it doesn't make sense for someone else to stop him with another executive decision. It doesn't fit in very well. But it's not impossible, but they're just not this way. So China and Russia both have no first strike policies already. China will only use nukes if it's attacked with nukes or the very existence of Russia is at stake or something like that. China will not use nukes at all until after it's been attacked. It will try to stop any ICBMs headed its way, but it won't retaliate until it's all over. The US is the only one of the three major powers not to have a no first use policy. And Biden wants the US to reconsider this no first use policy. So Congress could do that. It could pass a law saying that the US can never be first to use nukes. And if Congress did pass that law, then the president would still have the nuclear codes, would be the only one able to authorize an attack, but he could only do it in response to a nuclear attack by someone else on the United States. So that's the no first use idea. So in my longer video I go into a lot more detail about all that, and I explain how it's not really a serious possibility that the United States, although the United States has this, doesn't have a public no first use policy, then they must have secret policies, top secret policies they don't share with anyone. And it's really not credible that these permit a first use in normal peacetime situations. Like for instance, when Biden, and this was when a lot of people got scared with the Kim Jong-un and saying that Trump could attack him, and various other occasions during Trump's administration, it wasn't actually legally possible. Because the United States is bound by the 4 basic principles of the laws of armed conflict, and that has changed. So back at the time of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, then the laws, international laws of armed conduct were very different from what they are today. There were things like the bombing of Dresden, there were carpet bombing in Japan, there was carpet bombing in North Korea. Even what they did in Vietnam would not be permitted today. A US general would just refuse to do it if a president ordered them to do the same things that were done in Vietnam. So this has changed a lot, and in the modern world it's very hard to see any situation where a nuke could be used. It's even hard to see how it could be used in retaliation if someone attacked you. And indeed, that's very difficult. That doesn't really fit the 4 principles of the law of armed conflict either. But for sure, there's no way using it as attacking would ever fit that, because that includes, for instance, that you must be proportionate, you must be distinguish between the civilians and the military objectives, and it mustn't cause unnecessary suffering to civilians. So all that just rules out using a nuclear weapon. And I explain in the longer video a bit more about this, but if you are a soldier and you're just starting as a soldier in the United States, or in any country that's got reasonable level of lawfulness, and then you will be trained right from the beginning that if your superior, your officer, tells you to shoot someone, an unarmed, for instance, this is an actual event that happened in the past, that an officer ordered, I think it was in North Korea, I can't remember where it was, I think it was North Korea, where it was ordered his soldiers to shoot on civilians, and they weren't attacking him, and just killed everyone in the village. And then that was totally illegal. And even back then that was illegal. And so if you are a soldier, but what wasn't clear back then and has become clear since then is that a soldier is totally responsible for what he does. So even with the officer telling the soldiers to shoot these unarmed villagers, that was no excuse for the soldiers. They are still deeply illegal and a war crime for soldiers to carry out the order of an officer, if that's what the order is. And that goes all the way up to a 5-star general, and if the president gives the 5-star general an illegal order, then he has got it ingrained all the way through his entire professional life. And that could happen because a president is a civilian, he's not trained as a soldier. So there could be a circumstance in which a president gives an illegal order to a soldier, in which case the soldier would just refuse it. And he would just explain to the president that this is an illegal order. The assumption is that if the president gives it, then it's legal, but then if it goes against these 4 principles of the law of armed conduct, and these are just a summary of a very extensive legal situation, a summary to help people to understand the basics of how it works. So anyway, those are the main points I wanted to explain, and I go into much more detail, both in the article I go into quite a bit more detail. I just want to just say a couple of, I'll go through a few more of the other things here. So just to say, the US has already, although it hasn't got a no first use policy against nuclear states, it's got a no first use policy already against non-nuclear countries, so long as they abide by the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So they would only, the United States will not use a nuke unless the country involved is attempting to make nuclear weapons. That's basically the situation. So it has not said, it doesn't mean it will use a nuke if a country is trying to develop nuclear weapons. Of course, it doesn't mean that. They didn't nuke North Korea, but they haven't. They already agreed that they won't use a nuke at first use against a non-nuclear country. So that is already settled. But Biden and many others want them to go further and say they will never use a nuke for the first time against anyone, like Russia and like China. But their actual top secret policy may well be something like that. They have this policy of calculated ambiguity, where they don't tell anyone what their top secret policy is. And so basically this is about saying probably their top secret policy is that they won't use the nuke first either. And basically Biden wants them to look into reviewing their stance of calculated ambiguity and to consider moving towards explicit no first use policy. And that's the situation. We can't know what their top secret policy is, but as I explained, it's very difficult to see how it could be a first use policy. They could have actually permit first use, bearing in mind the 4 basic laws of the law of armed conduct, and bearing in mind it would surely be a legal policy. So anyway, that's my short summary, and then I've got a longer summary. I'll put that up, I've got that up already.